Hello, everyone, and welcome. Today, we're presenting the Summon and 360 and Entoda Services roadmaps. As Scott mentioned, I'm Brent Cook, the Director of Product Management for Summon. Today, I am joined by Amy Pemble, the Director of Product Management for Entoda and 360 Services. We've got a lot of great things to share with you today. We'll start off by reviewing what we have planned for the Summon 2023 roadmap. We'll share a few highlights around CDI development and what to expect there in 2023. Next, we'll talk a little bit about the 360 and Entoda Services roadmap, and then we'll finish up by talking about some upcoming webinars and other ways that you have been or can be engaged with the Summon community. And as Scott mentioned, we will have time for questions at the end. Please feel free to post those in the Q&A tool, and we'll be happy to answer them at the end of the webinar. So let's start off by reviewing what we've got planned for Summon in 2023. As we've done in previous years, we will have quarterly releases, one major release each quarter. Each will include release notes and a preview period. We just finished up the February release on February 1st. That was successful, and I'll talk a little bit about what we did then in just a moment. Next one coming up is on May 3rd, with the preview just around the corner at April 19th. The next one is on August 2nd, with the preview starting there on July 19th. And then we have one on November 1st, the last one of the year, with the preview starting on October 18th. For these releases, we'll try to put the majority of the user interface changes in the August release, but some may fall in other releases as well. As a reminder, we also have the maintenance releases on most first Wednesdays of all other months. These maintenance releases do not have a preview, nor do they have release notes usually, unless it includes some customer or patron-facing functionality. When that is the case, I will post information to the listserv and make sure there are release notes in the Knowledge Center if there do happen to be any changes that are customer or patron facing in those maintenance releases. So here we have the overall highlights of the Summon roadmap for what we're going to do in the first and second half of the year. As I'll share in a moment, we did some improvements around advanced search based on your feedback on the November release of 2022. We added SAML support for saved searches. We'll be doing some work around LTI support for Summon, and I'll go into some details on that. We're going to update our support for Google Analytics to the most recent version, Google Analytics 4. And we've got our first NERS feature of the year being added to the May release, and that's adding a sender email field for Summon in the citation emails. Something to note, so if you're not familiar with NERS, that's the new enhancement request system. That is the voting system by Igloo and Aluna that helps get items on the roadmap for the year. And as you can see, especially in the second half of the year, we've got a lot of great features coming to us from NERS. In addition, for the second half of the year, we'll be adding scopes for Summon searches, and I'll tell you a little bit more about what that is later in the presentation. We'll be adding course reserve support for our CR via Summon customers, and then we have a variety of NERS features, which are things like improving the quick look pane, which we did a refresh of last year, and we'll make some changes based on your feedback there. We'll be adding the ability to display 5xx fields in the quick look pane. We'll be adding a new helper text or link on the zero search results page to be able to search for include matches in full text. We'll be providing some customization capabilities for the right-hand panel. We'll do some work around language matching for Summon and 360 Link. And we're going to be working on some match and merge records, match and merge rules, particularly around records containing the content type of computer file. And of course, we always do throughout the year work on data quality improvements. I'll talk about that when I talk about CDI. We continue to work on analytics improvements, and accessibility is always a key concern for us. We want to make sure that things are as accessible as possible. So we do that work throughout the year as well. So first, let's take a moment to review what we've done for the roadmap for February. We had a lot of great things come out of that. A lot of it was improvements around the advanced search page, which again, we launched in November of 2022. There were a couple of pieces or elements on the page that you couldn't modify the font or color for. Those have been addressed now. Oh, excuse me. Sorry. We started off, one of the bits of feedback we had was around the search boxes themselves and how those are laid out. When we first launched it in November of last year, they were side by side. Based on your feedback and based on user expectations from other major databases, we now modify those so they're stacked one on top of the other. And as I was mentioning, We had some changes around being able to change the fonts and colors for the clear all and the search button on the advanced search page. We had a variety of other additional fixes based on your feedback for that release. In particular, the search options label at the top did not have a translations option. Now you can translate that and change that to whatever phrase you'd like. There was an issue in Firefox where the publication date preset filter buttons and the facet pane were formatted differently. That 1 year button was on one line versus 2 year for the rest. We addressed that so that now in Firefox that shows up as 2 lines for all buttons, as you can see there on the right-hand side. And then finally, we did some work on the library location facet values with the advanced search. If you did an advanced search and then went to the results set, your facets would be applied, but they would not show up as being activated in the facet pane. That's now been addressed so that you'll now see, like you see on the screen grab, then the blue number at the top and the appropriate item checked on the results page. We also added SAML for saved searches. At this time, I'm promoting it as Sierra via summon function, but that's purely because we've only tested it with Sierra so far. If you are using a SAML system besides Sierra, and you'd like to test that out with us and add SAML support for saved searches, you can do that. Just let me know. Please reach out to me. I'd love to do some testing with you on that. And we can do that in preview. What this feature does is add SAML integration to the save searches function. In the past, you could sign in with either Google Social Login or the Microsoft Social Login. The benefit to this was it meant that the patron didn't have to use a new login, and they could store the flat file with their saved searches in either their Google Drive or their Microsoft OneDrive, making sure that their personal information was in their hands. When we implemented this feature, we got feedback that there were some institutions that by policy don't allow for social logins on various institution systems. So we've now added SAML support. And this does 2 things. It allows your user to log in via their SAML login that they have for the rest of the things on your campus or institution. It also means that we now store that flat file of saved searches on Summon servers. So it's all contained within the Ex Libris cloud. I'm happy to report that that is GDPR compliant. It is something that we are concerned about, making sure that we manage people's personalization very carefully and closely, and that is available now. And you can add SAML support in addition to Google and Microsoft login. So if you'd like to configure it like you have it here on the screen grab with all 3 available for login, you can do that, or you can pick your favorite version of authentication. Next, I'll talk a little bit about the May release. Again, the preview environment for that goes live on April 19th. The production environment goes live on May 3rd. And we have a variety of features that will be part of that release. In particular, we'll be adding LTI support for Summon. As I mentioned earlier, we did some planning and design around that last year. Now we'll be setting up this service. What this does is it allows you to integrate Summon easily into learning management systems. Things like Canvas, Blackboard, and Moodle are all supported by this standard. So this should work with those. And so we will be developing that interface support. So this will actually be a multi-phased release feature because it's setting up a new service to connect with an outside or external system. So the majority of the development work will be done in that May release. And then after the release, we will need to do some work setting up various systems and security protocols and things like that. And so the rollout of the actual interface itself will be shortly after that release. We'll also be doing some work to move to the most recent version of Google Analytics. The current version of Google Analytics that we support in Summon will be ending in June. So this will be done at the beginning of May, hopefully giving enough time to make any conversions or move things over to the new version of Google Analytics, which is Google Analytics 4. And then the next thing that we have for the May release is the first of our NERS features for 2023, and that's the ability to add a sender email field to the citation email form in Summon. Currently, there are lots of people who use the citation format to email a citation to someone other than themselves, probably most often to a staff member or someone in the library, in order to get a question answered or some assistance. If this person doesn't think to put any personal information in the message part of the body, whoever receives that email will not be sure who sent it or how to follow up. So you'll now have the option at your institution to add this field to capture the person's email address, and the ability to make it required if you would like. The email address itself will be included in the body of the email that is sent to whomever the receiver is, rather than having it appear to be the actual from email address that it's sent from. The reason why we'll do it this way is that, unfortunately, if we try to use someone else's email to send from our email server, that could come across as spam or a spoofed email. So the email will still be addressed from the current email address that it uses. However, in the body of the email, you'll be able to require that someone identify who they are by email address in order to do follow-up. So that will be in the May release as well. Now I'd like to take a little time to talk about what we have planned for the second half of the year. And it's going to be quite a busy year as well. So first up, we have scopes for summon searches. This allows for your institution to set pre-filters for a search. You can do multiple pre-filters for your instance of summon. By creating scopes, you can prioritize the display of what you want to have and what order those scopes are displayed in. You can limit the content to local records. You can add or remove resources to a scope by ISBN or ISSN. You can add or remove institutional repositories to a scope search, and you can do library locations. This has been available in Primo, and what we've seen the institutions there use this type of functionality is around creating scopes about specific library locations or specific user needs that they know that their patrons specifically want. We also plan to add course reserve support for CR via Summon. This will provide the ability to have course reserve information such as instructor or course number acts as a facet, and have a page that reflects what course reserves are available for any particular course. Another NERS feature we have for 2023 is some improvements on the quick look pane. We did release an update to the preview pane, and which has now become the overlay quick view pane in the summer of last year. Now, the way it's laid out, the usefulness of that quick look pane can vary based on the metadata that is available for a specific record. So for example, if you look at the one that's on the screen, this one doesn't have an abstract or a description, so you've got a lot of white space, and all of the useful information is sort of crowded over to the right-hand side. When you have a record that is complete with an abstract and things like that, it's a fully fleshed out quick look pane. What we'll do is we'll adjust the layout so that it better accommodates any type of record, whether there is information absent or present, and if the information is absent, that it changes gracefully to best display the information and for the user to interact with it as well. Something that's been on the ID Exchange for a few years and has always been at the top there, and now is one of the top voted items for NERS, is the ability to display 5xx notes fields in the quick view pane. This will allow you to display both the label for that field and the value for that field in the quick view pane. If it's not there, if the field is blank, it and its label won't be displayed. And again, it should degrade nicely if those are not available. Something to note on this feature as well is that the development will be done as part of the release, and it will likely require mapping and content processing changes in order to implement this. So we will be working and providing information on how you can request this information and the time frame that it will take for us to do this for your institution. So we'll need to assist you in activating this for your institution. Another great suggestion that we have via the ID Exchange and ultimately the NERS voting system is the ability to add another option to the zero results page, and that's the ability to apply the include matches and full text facet via a link. Last year we had introduced the ability to either search full text fields by default, or turn that off and have it be a facet that you could either activate or deactivate. If you are one of those institutions that don't search full text by default, you will have the ability to add this link onto the zeros results page, and it'd be a great way for someone to expand their search and hopefully get some results, even when they've gotten 0 from their first attempt. Another feature from MERS is taking a look at that right-hand panel where we've got a lot of great useful information like custom panels that you create, the database finder widget from SpringShare, and Topic Explorer, and ultimately we'll be providing more options on how to configure this. Currently for the database finder widget from SpringShare, as you see there on the screen right now on the right-hand side, you can either have a blank search box or you can have it automatically search the phrase that's in the main summon search box, returning 10 results with details like the ones you see there on the right-hand side. That can be a lot of information and take over that right-hand side. So we're taking a look at how we can better provide configuration for that, more options on number of results and how they look, as well as taking a look at all of the elements that are in that column. Like the example I just brought up on the screen, you've got some updates around remote access and COVID-19, and then at the bottom you have Topic Explorer as well. Currently, the only layout changes you can make on that right-hand side is determining which comes first, Topic Explorer or everything else. You can put Topic Explorer at the top or at the bottom, and then everything else comes in the position that you've specified. This functionality will give more flexibility there and give you a little bit more ability to determine what's at the top, what's at the bottom, and what order these things come from. We're also working on making sure that the language that you have set in your summon user interface matches what you get through the 360 link resolver. Currently, that parameter isn't passed, which means that you can start off with one language in the summon UI and end up with another language once you click on the link. This functionality will make sure that those two are synced together as best as possible and pass that information from one to the other. And then finally, one of the things we're taking a look at is how to better treat records that are identified as computer file types, content types. Right now, computer file content type records are combined with a variety of things such as eBooks. We've heard from you and your patrons that that's confusing. They don't expect an ebook to also be a computer file. So rather than having those merge, we will be modifying the match and merge rules so the computer file types will still be duplicate against each other, but they won't merge with things like ebook content types. And then, as I mentioned earlier, both analytics and accessibility are things that we work on throughout the year. There's not a specific piece to a release. We usually do work in each release around these things. In particular, around accessibility, we've just completed our VPAT review for the year to update that. We identified a few areas where we could improve based on that analysis, and we're already putting those into releases right now, including maintenance releases. And anytime you or one of your patrons reports accessibility issues, we try to fix that as quickly as we possibly can, because we know it's critical that your institution's site be as available as possible to everyone, regardless of needs. So next, I'd like to take a few minutes to talk a little bit about some of the improvements we have planned for CDI. CDI continues to grow. It's about 5 billion records these days. And as we add all that content and we continue to work on it, we're always working on how better to manage it, the performance of it, and just the quality of the index overall. And here are a few of the projects that we've had in the works and will continue to work on in 2023 to improve your experience. I'm excited to say that we've already made some changes in the beginning of this year around CDI rights processing. In the past, due to the sheer volume of rights that we needed to process, it had gotten to where it could take anywhere from 48 to 72 hours for rights to process. I'm happy to report that now, as of the beginning of this year, we have reduced that time frame to 24 to 30 hours on average. We are continuing to work on that and see if we can reduce it even more, but that's quite a change from the beginning of the year. We're also working on data quality and how do we improve that overall. We're taking a look at both the language and publication date fields, and we've done some work already on how to improve the consistency around that. We're doing a better job of identifying book review content types within the index, because we know that that's something that a lot of you like to either exclude or facet out or take a look at specifically. So we're working on improvements of identification there. We're also working on how we handle open access content, particularly around the use of unpaywall. We'll be adding that as an index collection. So what that means is currently we have unpaywall available in Summon, and it's been like that for several years. And the way we implemented it initially is that we augment the records. So what that means is rather than it being a collection, anytime we do a search and we return results, we take a look at the results and say, is there an unpaywall link that we can add to this record? The benefit to that is that it means that you can just turn on unpaywall easily and that link comes in there quickly. However, that means that faceting against unpaywall is not available and a few other benefits like that. So we'll be adding this as a index collection. The functionality will still remain the same where those links are available if you want to have them available, but there'll be some additional functionality, some benefits around metadata and relevance and things like that as well that we'll get by adding this as a collection. We've also got a lot of bigger projects that take a longer time to put out there. We will continue to work on these throughout the year, and we'll give you updates when we're able to make changes or improvements based on these. In particular, we're taking a look at the addition of a secondary resource type for records in CDI. We're working on author names and trying to connect those to ORCIDs and possibly other IDs and normalizing those author names so that we have better quality and more usefulness of those author names that are in Summon and CDI. And then we're also working on separating keywords and normalized subjects as well. For search and ranking, I'm excited to say that we've already done a lot of work and we'll be launching here shortly known item search enhancements using artificial intelligence. By using an AI-based tool, we're able to better identify and parse citations for more accurate results. We did some work a few years ago to help out with this type of search, which is basically when individuals take an entire citation and paste it into the search box. And we made some good improvements then, but again, as the index has grown and the environment has changed, we've seen that that's an area that needs some more attention. And this should give a nice boost and good improvement to providing those types of searches, which can contain a lot of great information, but also punctuation and other things that can make known item searches a little more difficult. With the release of this, you should see a much better return of known item searches using that methodology. We're also adding support of Malingo, which is a Hebrew search plugin for CDI, and we have ongoing enhancements overall. As always, whatever feedback that we get from you, we'll do some testing around different search algorithms and things like that to see how we might be able to improve items. And the addition of content to CDI always changes the mix as well. So we're constantly reviewing, analyzing, and testing against these things to hopefully make sure that it's performing as well or identify places where we can make it better. Finally, I want to talk a little bit about quick links, which is part of CDI. If you're not familiar with the quick links program, what we're doing there is we work specifically with providers in order to get the best possible URLs to take the end user, your patrons, to the full text via either PDF or HTML. So it's a great program, makes for very successful linking. We're adding more content providers to this program in 2023. There are now 31 supported providers. You can see a table on the right-hand side that's a screen grab of all those providers right now. If you can read that, that's quite impressive. What I would suggest is if you want to find out more about who is on the list and who is part of the Quick Links provider program, you can follow that URL at the bottom of the screen. We'll make sure that the PDF for this webinar itself, the presentation, and that URL is available to you. So no need to write that down right now. We can make it so that it's easy for you to access and take a look at that. It now includes, it now includes over 10,000 collections with 1.55 billion records. In November, we did some testing and some metrics around it to see how much it was being used and how effective it was. There are over 250 institutions, at least 100 clicks each in November. There are over 400 institutions that are active or testing with this functionality. In November, we saw more than 300,000 clicks. And when you click on those, we see a success rate of about 99%. So again, it really makes a big difference on how successful and effective your linking is overall. And with that, I'd like to hand it over to Amy to talk a little bit about 316 and Toda services.
Thanks, Brent. Thanks everyone for taking time out of your day to hang out with us and learn about our roadmaps. I'm really pleased to share some of the projects that we're working on that will expand our services, expand our offerings to you, increase your efficiencies in managing e-resources, which is always, one of our primary goals, and offer some opportunities to innovate using the data from the 316 and Toda services, innovate and, try to do some experimentation perhaps outside of that ecosystem. Next, please. So our roadmap highlights include a couple of new initiatives that frankly are pretty big undertakings and that will span a great deal of the year, as you'll see when I put up the timeline. First, we're diving headfirst into auto holdings management using the KBART recommended practice. If you've been on a webinar with me in recent quarters, then you know that our end goal in beginning to support the KBART standard was always to expand our auto holdings offerings beyond eBook Central and to work with other providers. Second, we're analyzing ways that we can safely and intelligently open up the 360 ecosystem by expanding our API capabilities to allow a little more innovation and experimentation outside of those native applications. We also have a couple of NERS and idea exchange projects as well. One of which is the official NERS commitment is the open access indicator. That was the highest vote getter, and it will allow you to quickly identify resources from the 360 KB that are open access. We're scoping this out right now, the team and I, and trying to decide if should it just be an indicator, should it be a search filter, should there be some kind of percentage display at a database level to let you know if there's mixed content. So that's a great one. We're excited to work on it, and we think it's going to be super helpful for you. The second project listed under the NERS heading is not an official commitment, but it does address a request that actually garnered a lot of votes. It was something that we were already working on, so it was kind of a nice dovetail there. But it should vastly decrease the need for you to ask us or ask support in the content team to add an identifier to a title. The situation there is that, as many of you know, sometimes a normalized title doesn't have all of the associated identifiers linked to it. And when that happens, sometimes you can't find it in EJP. So the standard pathway has been for you to open a case with support, and then someone in content has to manually add that identifier. It's a pain. It takes longer than it really should. So as I said, this is a project we were already working on that would allow us to do some auto normalization, really eliminate those calls to, or I should say those cases to support. So those projects are, as always, balanced with our need to address accessibility issues, deliver monthly linker deployments, maintain our infrastructure, and resolve issues that get reported to us either through support or through other channels. Next, please. So first, I'm going to take a look at what we accomplished in the first quarter release that came out February 1st. One new project that we included was a new counter report status. So for users of 360 Counter and in Toda, to accompany the existing consolidated pending and error statuses, we added deleted. And this was to answer the case of why are the numbers I see in my counter reports different than what I think I uploaded. Frequently it turned out to be the case that someone either at the library or someone on our support team actually manually deleted a counter report. But that wasn't obvious from the interface. And of course that changed the numbers at the end that you could see in reports. And we would have to spend some time digging around, figuring out what actual events occurred around a report's history. So this is one of those things that, and make obvious to you what happened with a report. It should eliminate the need to contact support, and it will give you better visibility into what has happened with the report and its history. Next, please. Next project that we delivered in Q1 was a reduce and changed records in the 360 MARC services. We saw that after last June's database upgrade, there was a sharp increase in the number of changed records for unnormalized titles. And it was significant enough that you guys noticed that you were getting bigger files from us. And it was taking, therefore, much longer to load those into the ILS or whatever the remote system was. And so we needed to dig into what was happening there. What we found is that we could make some improvements to how we process title and publisher fields. And in so doing, we stabilized the unnormalized record generation for months to come. It should result in a fewer changed records, which will of course lead to smaller files and less load time on your end. Next, please. Some additional improvements that we delivered were new linkers for eBook Central, Nature, and Clinical Ethics. We disabled cross-ref enrichment for titles when Summon was the referring source. We followed up on some features that we delivered late last year in the 360 environment. We delivered the ability to do batch database upload changes in Entoda, and we also delivered the ability to upload KBART formatted files within Entoda. So again, that was something that we had scoped out and accomplished for 360, and now we needed to add it into Entoda. In Consortium Edition, we added the ability to, for Consortium member libraries to inherit from the parent provider-specific linking parameters. In this case, it was specifically for EBSCO authorization settings, but it would apply to any kind of linking parameters that are required for specific providers. Those member libraries are now able to see the inherited parameters, and if permissions have been granted, to change those. Next, please. So just to go back to some of our key initiatives for this year, we really want to help you increase your return on investment by providing auto holdings management services. Again, this is using the KBART standard, the KBART recommended practice. Excuse me. We are currently, at this moment, working with the good folks at Taylor and Francis to deliver this. We're testing their API, we're getting our infrastructure ready, we're making sure that we have the requisite databases set up in our KB, and we're beginning to exchange data. Following on to that to Taylor and Francis, we'll be looking to work with the folks at Springer, Elsevier, Wiley, and Ovid. And I know that everyone has, other providers that they would like us to work with, and that's fantastic. But this is the list that we're going to start with, simply because we have existing relationships with them, because they've done similar work with other teams, such as Alma and SFX. So, they know the ins and outs, they know where the obstacles are, they've kind of ironed out their processes, and it's just a good runway for us to ramp up our auto holdings management offerings. Next, as I mentioned, we are looking to foster our open integration with remote systems, whether it's a system that you've developed yourself, whether it's another commercial system or open source system, and by expanding our API capabilities. We have always offered tools to extract your holdings information, but spreadsheets don't necessarily encourage data exchange at scale or very quickly. We also have APIs. They are limited to what can actually be read out of the database. So now we're doing the analysis to look at what it takes to do, as I said earlier, to do this safely and intelligently, to extract more information from the 360 environment, and possibly also to write back to the 360 environment. Details will be forthcoming. We're just getting into that analysis, and I will certainly have more to share as the year goes on. Again, we have a couple of ideas exchange projects that we're going to be working on. Our commitment is for the open access indicator, or whatever that kind of expands into. As I said, maybe a search filter or whatnot. But we are, the team and I are scoping that out right now. And again, we're going to be increasing the normalization rates, getting those additional identifiers into normalized titles so that you don't have to call up support and say, please add this ISBN to this title, so that it can be found in EJP or 360 link. Next, please. Timeline, what that looks like. I've got the next quarterly releases listed here: May 3rd, August 3rd, November 1st. The projects with the arrows spanning multiple buckets or quarters are those ones that I mentioned are, big undertakings that can't be accomplished in 1 or 2 sprints. That's the auto holdings with KBART. That's linked to, although it's not an official NERS commitment, that particular undertaking does span multiple ID exchange numbers. It's something that we know we've had to work on for a while now. The Open API analysis is going to be an ongoing project. Again, more details will be forthcoming. Also in May 3rd, right now, what we have targeted is a completed audit of the counter compliant providers for counter R release 5. Adoption of that standard has grown. Providers have ironed out their sushi endpoints, their API keys, things like that. There is a listed compliance registry on the counter website, and so we're just making sure that our backend matches up with that. So that we, if someone does support sushi harvesting, we want to make sure that we offer that to you within the interface of 360 Counter and Entoda. There are a couple of EJP accessibility requests that we're going to be fulfilling. These came directly from clients, so it wasn't something that necessarily got flagged in a VPAT review. But it is something that we address because, as Brent mentioned, accessibility is incredibly important. So if there's something that we need to look at, we do that when it's reported. There are also some sushi harvester and consolidation refinements that we need to make in order for usage report statistics to be correctly processed, correctly harvested. And some of that is provider outreach. You hate to get a report that says, well, a column is missing that's supposed to be there. But, sometimes we do have to say, hey, this is what the standard says, this is what we need to say. So there's some back and forth involved in that too. And I've got infrastructure listed under May 3rd, but as you can see, that goes on all year. That entails things that aren't necessarily obvious to you, but that my team absolutely has to address, whether that's upgrading Tomcat, putting in a new JDK, or upgrading jQuery. All of that is involved, and it goes on all year long. For the August 3rd release, right now we're targeting, as I said, the increased auto normalization to eliminate missing identifiers from a normalized title. That is something that we're going to be working on with our content team. Our metadata librarians will be heavily involved in assuring that that process is working correctly and is yielding what we expect to see. We don't want to set that loose into the world and have things go wrong. So that's going to have a lot of eyeballs on it. We will be working to achieve WCAG level A and level AA compliance for 360 Link. We did do a VPAT in January of 2023. Well, I should say the user experience team at ProQuest did it. And they raised some issues that we need to take a look at. It's no problem. The team's on it. They're going to have that accomplished. Another ID exchange issue that we'll be addressing that spans all, both of our products is adding back the link to Summon Analytics in 360 Client Center and in Entoda that doesn't require a Summon admin role. November 1st, what I've got listed for here is that open access feature that is the NERS commitment. And I know that November 1st looks sparse now, but as I'm sure everyone knows, a lot of things happen during the year. And, you know, what I can say about that release is that it's going to be evolving, and the roadmap will evolve to meet the needs and expectations and requests. We're always happy and actually thrilled to work on ideas exchange, ideas in the idea exchange, even if they haven't been officially voted on. So those will be popping up throughout the year as I review what gets submitted. And that is what I wanted to share for right now. So back to you, Brent.
Thanks, Amy. Next, we'd like to take a little bit of time to talk to you about how you can be engaged as part of the Summon community, or how you have been engaged in the past. In particular, I want to talk a little bit about some upcoming webinars and activities we have planned. There is a content quarterly webinar coming up on the 21st of March of this month. There are 2 instances of that, so please sign up for the one that's appropriate for wherever you live in the world. This will be focusing on data excellence at your service. We also have in April, the next What's New with Summon. We'll review what's coming up in the the May releases and the remainder of the year as part of that webinar. There are 3 instances of that happening on April 18th and 19th, so please choose the one that's appropriate for you. And we've got Aluna and Igloo coming up this year, both of which will be in person. So really excited about getting to go out to those and see some of you in real life. Aluna is May 9th through 12th in Los Angeles, California, and Igloo is in September from the 11th through the 14th, and that will be in Belgium. Next, I want to talk a little bit about your direct impact to the product. As I described it earlier, the new enhancement request system, or NERS, and your involvement in that through Igloo and Aluna, and your contributions to the idea exchange result in specific direct action in the product and features that you see on a daily basis. In 2022, NERS brought you such things as some refinements around the content type web resources. A lot of those web resources actually were from news blogs and things like that, so they should have been identified as online newspaper articles. We did some cleanup around that in 2022. We added the ability to see the coverage dates for e-journals in your results in Summon. That's available as a brief summary in the results themselves, and then on the quick look pane, you can see more details there as well. We added the ability to ensure the open access link is available for all open access content. Prior to this change, you could have a result that had an open access indicator or the icon showing up on the brief results. And if you had not activated that open access content package within your instance of Summon, the link would not show up as part of that result. And we've resolved that by making the icon itself a link now. And regardless of whether or not you've added that collection to your instance of Summon, that link will be available and take you to the open access content if you so choose. We also added collection discovery for Summon over all the customers. This is a much more visual way to present your collections for your patrons to discover and peruse. And then finally, we did the design and plan work for the LTI work that we're doing this year in Summon. That was brought to you by Igloo and Aluna last year. We also did a lot of work around ideas that came in through the idea exchange. We completed a lot of those in 2022, particularly as we did the refresh to the results page themselves and the advanced search and the quick look. All of those, we took a look at various bits of feedback or ideas that you had presented on the idea exchange and incorporated those into those improvements. In particular, the ability to reorder the facets listed in the refine your search section of the Summon results page, and moving that add results beyond your library collection to that section. You can see the screen grab on the right-hand side that shows the refining your search part of the facet pane. You can now order those in whatever order you'd like. We also improved the usability for advanced search. In particular, the windows for interacting with the facets were too small and difficult to navigate. So we hopefully improve those tools in the new layout for advanced search. We also made custom panels available on mobile. Previously, if you wanted those custom panes to show up on your mobile devices, you could do so, but only through a workaround by adding JavaScript to a custom pane in Summon. Now that is provided by default as part of mobile. Another bit of feedback was that the language dropdown, the ability to change what language the Summon user interface is displayed in, that was in the hamburger menu or the dropdown menu in the upper right-hand corner of the search results page. Some people couldn't find it. It was hidden. So we've now brought that out so that it's part of the right there in the user interface and easy to see and interact with. We also did a lot of improvements around citation styles. We added the ability to use citation styles from citationstyles.org, which maintains a GitHub of a variety of citations. You can actually add your own if you'd like, or modify existing ones there as well. In the Idea Exchange, we have requests for a variety of different citation styles that weren't previously supported by Summon. That includes things like the Chicago Notes bibliography style, the MHRA referencing citation style, the Council of Science and Editors formatting style, style guide for ACS or the American Chemical Society, and a variety of other ones that needed to be updated to current editions, including AGLC4. You can now add all of those or modify them or add your own using the new citation style customization feature that is available in Summon. We also addressed some issues with the display of information in the preview pane. And again, all this was great feedback from you on the Idea Exchange that we built into the user interface improvements that we did over the last year.
So 2022 saw the inaugural NERS project for the 360 and TOTUS services, but we also accomplished the things listed here. So, excuse me, based on the fantastic ideas submitted by the community. First was to limit the EJP autocomplete suggestions to only subscribed titles. So instead of seeing everything from the KB, the auto suggestions just list what folks actually would be able to access via that search. We're showing the MARC record availability or the normalization percentage at the database level. So on database details in both Entota and 360, you can see that percentage now. The NERS commitment that we did last year was to change the EJP sort order to favor main titles over alternate titles when the search string was actually in the main title. That is documented, it is optional, but is documented, and you can find that information about that in the Knowledge Center if you haven't already seen it. Additionally, we provided the possibility to upload database orders for 360 Link and EJP from a file into the 360 Link admin console. So rather than futzing around with drag and drop or trying to renumber things, you can order a spreadsheet in the way you want and bulk upload that to the admin console. We now support the ability to upload KBART formatted files for provider collections as well as library specific holdings. You can do that manually right now, both in 360 and in Entota. And again, as part of developing that support, we are expanding our solutions for auto holdings with additional providers to those that I listed earlier. And for consortium sharing, we are now showing the terms of use in the EJP. Back to you, Brent.
And thank you to everyone for attending today. Amy and my email address is there on the screen. If you have any follow-up questions, concerns, or comments you'd like to make, please feel free to reach out to us there. You can also always post to the listserv. And, you know, as we just mentioned with that last one, support case can also help as well if you need specific help on a specific issue for you. But I really want to take the time to thank you for spending your hour with us today, reviewing the roadmap. As we've mentioned multiple times throughout the webinar today, we are strong as a product and a community because of your input and your involvement, your contributions to Idea Exchange, the emails you send us, the conversations you have with us. They help us make better informed choices around the product and hopefully create a better product together that makes all of our lives a little bit better. So thank you so much for your time and involvement. Amy?
Yeah, I also appreciate your time. I hope you saw some things on the roadmap that are exciting or useful or that you think will be, you know, great for the product. Please do continue to suggest ideas to the Ideas Exchange. As I said, you know, the second half of the year is not complete yet, and we are able to pick up some of those ideas and include them, even if they weren't officially voted on by for NERS. If you're going to eLuna in person, please reach out to me. I would love to meet with you. And again, thank you. Have a fantastic day.